Again, we're a small group, so encourage you to interact with us and others on the call. And we will try to make sure that we address any preliminary questions that you have about e4usa. But since we are a small group, maybe I should just start by asking what major questions or what preliminary questions that you have at this time, just so I make sure that we cover them as we're talking. Anyone? Or if not, you can just wait and hear as we go. Lynn?
Sure. I guess the format and to what extent, I guess my question centers around more, can this curriculum be combined with existing engineering classes in a school, or does it need its own teacher, its own class track? And what you had in mind for the school to teach it is what grade level you have in mind. So that would.
Yeah, I'll answer the latter question first. And we have gone as young as 9th grade, and we have had older students, upperclassmen and women in high school. But it's anybody in high school, but generally speaking, it's an algebra-based requirement. And so you'll hear more in the first answer to your question about introducing it into an existing curriculum versus a standalone course or something of that sort, or existing class versus a standalone class. We will certainly cover that. That's a pretty popular question and a common one. So thank you, Lynn, for getting us going.
My questions were very similar, so I think that you'll have it covered. Perfect.
So you've heard from us, and so Adam and Stacy joining me today. And I should have mentioned I'm part of our FIU, Florida International University. I'm part of the School of Universal Computing, Construction, and Engineering Education, otherwise known as SUCCEED. We all love acronyms. FIU is no different. So that's my background. Okay. Engineering for Us All has several core, I would say, partners or several lead institutions. University of Maryland is the lead institution on the grant, and I'm happy to say that we were just renewed. So this is an updated NSF award number as of this year for another 3 years of funding from 2021 until 2024. Our initial 3 years were from 2018 until 2021. And so for the most part, the universities that you see on the screen were involved in the initial part of the proposal. We have had some movement of faculty, including a faculty member that moved from Virginia Tech to University of Indianapolis. But for the most part, these are the core. And then we have a series of other universities like mine at FIU and now Johns Hopkins University that are associated with the project in different roles and different capacities. But just wanted you to know from a larger perspective who we are and where we are in the country with our respective universities. With that being said, I'm now going to turn the virtual floor over to Adam. And Adam, you are slides 6 through 12. And so you can see the order number, the slide number in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Adam?
Thanks, Brooke. So to kick us off here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the general overview structure of the curriculum that we started developing in 2018 and implemented in 2019. And of course, we all know what happened in that school year going into the spring of 2020 when many schools had to shift, right, to virtual, at home, various other aspects. The curriculum itself, though, is still built on 4 foundational pieces: discovering engineering, engineering in society, engineering professional skills, and engineering design. And what you will see from this, and on my next slide, is that we've differentiated our curriculum by using these 4 sort of pillars and the 4 colors, as you will see, which will resonate throughout all of e4usa, including our logo, to provide students with hands-on experiences, but to not replicate what already exists and to not provide sort of a survey course. So let's break this down a little bit, if you can bring me to my next slide here, about what is unique about e4usa. All right, what we are attempting to do is to promote development of students' skills, specifically professional skills, through design experiences. So we're not focused on a specific technology. We are happy to collaborate with various industry partners like MATLAB and to partner with other programs like FIRST Robotics. but it's not a specific technology that we're trying to embed in the experiences that these students are having in the classroom. It's also not a survey course in terms of disciplines. This isn't, let me tell you what mechanical engineering is versus what electrical is versus what material science is. All right, the goal is to give students a broad engineering experience so that they can, as I noted in those 4 areas, discover what engineering is, recognize how it connects to society, what sort of underlying skills they need outside of technical skills, and they get that hands-on piece. We've designed the course to be for all students. And so we're attempting to be as inclusive as possible in terms of our design, and recognizing that every school is a little bit different in terms of what resources they have. And every student is going to be a little bit different in terms of why they might enroll in such a course. Yes, we do hope that students go on to pursue engineering because of an experience like this, but we also recognize that not every student is going to go off and become an engineer, but having an understanding of what engineering is through a course like this is going to be beneficial to our broader citizenship. All right, so yes, we hope that students will pursue, but we don't expect all will. We invite all schools, all teachers, all students to participate in this, regardless of what their technical background is. For example, we have a music teacher, we have a history teacher who are teaching this course. You do not need to have an engineering degree, nor do you have to have ever taught an engineering course prior to teaching the e4usa course. And we've developed it in that way to be flexible and adaptable for each school that we engage with. And so these are some of those underlying unique pieces of e4usa, and why we call ourselves for all. That for all piece are captured in this essential pieces. So in the next 4 slides, I'm just going to kind of break down the 4 different areas a little bit for you. And as expected in any curriculum development, things are going to evolve. We're now in iteration 4, I believe, and now shifting into iteration 5 of the curriculum. I'm just going to give you a very high level what is involved in each one of these areas. And of course, there's learning outcomes that are associated with each one of these areas, and those are embedded throughout the curriculum through the various different units, lessons, and activities. So what is Discover Engineering? We want students to understand what engineering is and how they are as an engineer, that identity piece. Right? We want them to develop a growth mindset, which is something that is pervasive at the K-12 level. We want students to engage in critical self-reflection, sharing what they learn, and engaging in what engineers might do in the real world. And that means working with real people, working with communities, partnering with universities, and partnering with local industry. From a teacher expectation, we want them to be culturally responsive in terms of their practices, engaging students, right, in terms of how they learn, and modifying and adapting our curriculum to fit their particular school and their students' needs. In the next section, when we're focusing on engineering and society, this is that piece, you can go, there you go, that has us sort of adopting multiple viewpoints. We want students to understand this connection to all the disciplines, right? Recognizing that engineering is not just an engineering team specifically. Oh, I go get a mechanical, I get an electrical, and they're going to solve the world's problems, right? We need to have people with various different expertise coming together to work together to solve real people's problems. Yes, people are going to go off and work for large corporations and build, high-end technological tools, but we also recognize that we need engineers to help bring clean water and sanitation to people around the world. That's not necessarily sexy in terms of like, oh, I'm not developing a new iPhone, but we're helping students recognize what engineers can do for people, generally speaking. We want teachers to mentor access and facilitation, all right? And getting that better understanding of engineering being a part of the world, right? There's tons of research out there when we have students and people generally gauge engineering as how it potentially impacts people's lives. And it always is near the bottom because people don't see that connection to society, to people. And that's one thing that we call out very specifically in our curriculum. Next slide, Brooke. This next slide, this next component of the curriculum is this connection to professional skills relating to engineering. This is something I know I struggle as a university faculty when I'm telling students I'm going to assess them on things like communication and teamwork, and they're like, why am I being assessed on a non-engineering skill? Because all they think about is the technical component. helping students recognize the importance of being able to have these sometimes called soft skills. I hate that term, right? Because these aren't soft skills. These are important skills, just as important as the technical piece. All right, how do I act as an engineer? How do I communicate? How do I work with others? There's a big teaming component that's embedded in our curriculum and allowing students to engage with other students along with the community and their teacher. Right? We want students to be prepared, right? We want our teachers to help them prepare for these potential next steps that they could take if they decide to pursue a career pathway in engineering. And again, there's a big component around teaming and communication embedded in the curriculum. The final component of our curriculum is the green one, engineering design. And this is that hands-on piece. We want students to get their hands dirty, right? For teachers, we want them to find real problems that students are going to be excited about. The way our curriculum works is that over time, over the course of the curriculum, students start to become more and more responsible. The problems become a little bit more open-ended. But we need teachers to make sure that they're providing mechanisms that allow students to pursue the things that are going to excite them, things that they're interested in. There's a component that's embedded with a digital portfolio that we're working with, the My Design, which is another piece that's connected to E4usa. And then every school, again, is going to be a little bit different in terms of access to equipment and space and how local they may be to local universities or industry partners. We want students to be able to get those hands-on experiences and to engage with the community as much as possible. In some instances, it will involve working with less technical tools, but as long as students have that opportunity to go through the process, that's a key piece of the curriculum. Again, this is a very high-level introduction to the curriculum. There's far more detail. I'm just going to throw in the chat here. This is the direct link to the curriculum on E4usa site. We have a whole bunch of overview documents. We're continually updating this curriculum as we collect research data. As you know, I'm leading the research piece. And we're also going to be making a lot of this available through teachengineering.org, which is another one of our partners. But again, this is just a real high-level overview of our curriculum. If you have any general questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself, as I know Stacy's going to transition here into talking a little bit about the development and timeline.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions so far for Adam? Okay, again, we'll have time for questions at the end. Stacy?
All right. Thank you, Adam. All right, so I want to tell you a little bit, if you want to advance the slide, Brooke, just kind of big picture, a little bit about our history. Our history is actually longer even than the 2018 date you see here. A lot of this work comes out of Dr. Lee Abst, formerly of Johns Hopkins and then University of Maryland, with a group of us that started creating an assessment tool for evaluating engineering design process work. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So that predates it by a long time. We started trying to work with deans maybe a decade ago or so, or maybe even more. They weren't quite ready. Now the deans are ready. They've signed on to this, and so NSF came to us and said, it's time. Go ahead and write the grant, and let's start working. And we received the grant originally to write more of an advanced course in engineering. But we had our first big meeting in the fall, December of 2018, with 100 and something engineering educators from all around the country, a lot of university folks, high school teachers, and the deciding memo that we got from that was that you can't have an advanced course until you have the introductory course. You won't be able to do that for us all. They won't be there if you don't help get them there. So with NSF's permission, we shifted our focus and began in 2018, really 2019, writing our curriculum as an introduction to engineering course. Your first course in engineering is where this one typically falls. So that first school year, 2018-2019, we wrote and we recruited teachers and we got ourselves ready to start. We ran professional development that summer of 2019. And started school that year in 9 different classrooms, and and then started to grow from there. That pilot year, we kept updating our curriculum. We ran additional professional development during the year, and recruited more teachers. Then of course, COVID hit. So that threw in the unexpected variable of how does this work in an online setting? And so we've gotten a lot of experience in that as well in the 2020-2021 year. So we really grew more in that time, more minor updates, but still updates to our curriculum until this year. And right now we are in, we have 54 high school partner teachers in 49 different actual high schools. We have, those are located in 19 different states plus DC in the US Virgin Islands. And you can see that the different colors on here just mean when different states came on board and when they were added. They're all active now. And each high school is assigned a university liaison. And that is someone who is willing to meet with them once a month, maybe provide resources, sometimes help. The resource might be in the form of an expert who could help with a particular design project. It could be in the form of someone who is a sounding board and helps the teacher pick an appropriately scoped and scaled kind of project. So that's where we are now. We recently received an additional 3 years of funding to continue our research. And here we are, we're recruiting some more. This will probably be our last big recruitment for our research study that's taking place in now. So speaking of that, if you are a high school who might want to join us, or are you a university liaison who might be helping to recruit a high school, here's our timeline. So obviously right now we've opened the high school applications for this year. December 10th is going to be our priority application due date. Though our applications will remain open beyond that. That'll be our first time we'll really sit down and start reviewing schools. We anticipate in December, in rolling on beyond that, making what we're calling a conditional notification of acceptance. And that is something where we're saying we want to partner with you and we're eager to welcome you into the fold, but we want to go through the IRB process with you. So we've already done the IRB process on our side, but we need to get through the individual schools processes. And we have found that varies tremendously in scope and time. But we want to make sure that, that people can join us and participate fully, because we are paying people and paying teachers and schools because we need data. We need to learn, is our curriculum working or not? Is it in doing things like increasing engineering curiosity or self-efficacy and things like that? So we'll have that time in the kind of the winter and early spring in order to get permission from the schools to participate. In the spring of 22, probably late in the spring, we anticipate onboarding for teachers just to welcome them and let them make sure they know what it is they've joined. And then our PD will take place, really the PD will take place in July for our incoming teachers. And we've got the date set for that, and we can share that as people want to know. And then we will, whenever school starts, wherever you live, that's when e4usa starts for us. So you will work on your school's calendar. Next slide, please. All right, so looking at the application is a two-part process. There's a part that both the teacher who might be teaching or will be teaching the course, if accepted, will complete, and then a part that the administrator does. So the teacher is really just a statement about, we want to know some about them, but we're also not judging that tremendously. If people are interested in working with us, we're interested in bringing them on board. It was mentioned earlier that you don't have to be a STEM teacher. You could be a variety of things. And of course, we love our practicing, our engineers who come to education like you, Jonathan. We love that. That's a tremendous asset for us. But we also want to make sure that everyone realizes this is open. So the teacher's application is pretty straightforward and pretty quick, actually, just to give us some information about you and where you've taught and what you've studied in the background, and then to tell us a little bit about why you want to join us. The administrator application must accompany the teacher application. There are, separate Google Forms, but we have to have both parts in order to be able to evaluate the application. So the administrator does a little bit more about telling us what is that IRB process going to look like. Who are the key people? Is there a form we need to fill out? Just details to get us started there. The administrator will also give us things like just general contact information, who's completing it, what other courses are offered at the high school, is there a particular university with whom you already have a relationship. We'll ask for data about the student body, very broad student demographics questions. And we'll make sure that the administrator and teacher application kind of name each other so we know how to match them up. And they would also give us contact information for the teacher that would be implementing the class. And again, I'll mention that our priority deadline is Friday, December 10th. We hope people will be able to meet that, but of course we will continue to accept applications after that date. So why do we think that a high school might want to do this? Well, we think there are a lot of great reasons why you might want to do this. The first of which is the tremendous quality and volume even of professional development that we offer to our teachers. There is summer professional development. It typically, we reserve the right to change, but this year it's set again. It spans 2 weeks. It's not full days. There's both synchronous and asynchronous parts to that. And then we have some other additional professional development for new teachers that takes place in the fall, just 1 hour once a week. And then in January, we do a 3-hour session. But there are also lots of other optional professional development things that take place that you can pick and choose from depending on what your needs and desires are. But we think we really bring a lot of information to people, whether they've taught engineering or not, about how to make engineering for us all. We think it's important that you have the opportunity to inspire and engage students, particularly historically underrepresented populations in engineering. Again, that for us all piece. How do we attract those folks in and then keep them there? And access to a no-cost research-based curriculum. I think Adam mentioned earlier that we partner with teachengineering.org, which is the premier place to find good engineering activities and lessons. And they have a separate hub that has been created just for us. Right now, it is password protected, so you have to have credentials to get on there. Eventually, though, we plan to release the curriculum for free to anyone who wants to teach E4usa in the country. We do, for participating high schools and teachers, we do have a financial incentive. So for complete fulfillment of our obligations that we engage in a contract with our teachers, we pay our new teachers in their first year a total of $5,000 across the scope of the year. In the second year and beyond, we pay them $3,000. We also offer money, a budget, for the teacher to purchase things that they might need for their classroom supplies as well. For new teachers, they have access to a budget of up to $2,500. For returning teachers, they have a fixed budget of $1,000, but then access to a larger pot of money this year, totaling about $50,000. So teachers can buy, equipment if they need to, but they also just might need to buy supplies depending on whatever projects they end up choosing or problems they end up choosing for their students to solve. The last thing I'll mention there is fulfillment of graduation requirements. I think schools do it in a variety of different ways, in places where they put our class, what it counts for, but we do want it and insist that it counts for a graduation requirement. Next slide, and I think I may have hit a lot of that just now. Sorry that I jumped ahead a slide there, but we do, if we're able to, which we hope to get people together in person again. Right now we are relying on Zoom and doing our PD that way. We do encourage teachers who are in the same physical proximity to get together and participate in the PD in the same room so that when we do things in groups, they can actually just be a group. And we mentioned already the stipend, the budgeted. We budget for 1 teacher per school. Occasionally, for usually in a second year, we might add another teacher. Typically, we look to fund 1 teacher per school. And then, as I mentioned, there is an allowance for material supplies and other startup costs, and that funding is available through e4usa. So what do we expect of our high schools? Well, first thing, an important thing is that we expect this, I'll call it a full year course, or maybe I should say it's a course similar to where you might offer Algebra 1 or English 2. It's the same amount of instructional time as a traditional full year course. We say it like that because we recognize that there are high schools that are on things like a 4x4 model, where a student might complete the entire year of coursework in one semester, and that is permissible. But generally, we're looking for, if you're thinking more about a traditional course structure, about 200 minutes of instructional time per week for 30 weeks. So again, whatever you're doing for English 2, Algebra 1, Physics, that is what we're looking for here. We do not fit into a semester-only class if it's only half the amount of instructional time. We expect that at the end of your course, you would administer a summative course examination. We expect that you would provide sufficient time per class meeting to work on engineering design projects. We really hope that those might be longer blocks of time, but of course, we don't dictate the school schedule. So it's just something, it's a preference in that particular time. We hope that the schools will provide tools and facilities to create prototypes of their design projects. So there's no particular piece of software we're expecting you to buy. There's no particular tool you have to have. We give you a budget to buy things with if there's something that suits you. We tend to use software that's freely available and can work with things your school might already have in place. We do hope that the school has a physical place that engenders project-based learning as best as possible. Teachers also need to be given adequate time during the school day to prepare properly for and generate curriculum materials in response to student design project concepts. And that school sites really must support an e4usa teacher's full participation in our professional development and other obligations. So the teacher must be able to attend the full Summer Institute online during those 2 weeks. And then any other things that we have during the year, we anticipate that the school will, if need be, would provide leave, but it would at least support it and not expecting you to be doing 16 other things at the same time. So we want schools not to be simultaneously enrolling you in other professional development opportunities in the summer. All right, I think that finishes me off, and I think, Brooke, I might be turning the floor back to you. Is that right? Or is it to Adam?
It can be, but no, it's actually going to be our dear colleague, Adam. And so,
right.
Adam, you have slides 19 through 22.
Indeed. So what I'm going to just quickly overview is some additional details relating to professional learning as it associates, as we incorporate it throughout e4usa. So what you see here first is what happens when a teacher and a school joins e4usa. And the first thing that sort of happens is a welcoming, if you will, some asynchronous activity to engage teachers and schools and various other members of the e4usa family, if you will, and you'll see the full community of practice here in a second. But sort of welcoming, providing some overviews, connecting with the team, doing some asynchronous before we get to that live onboarding component, which is the summer PD that Stacy was referring to. So you can jump to the next slide here, Brooke. So we did shift. So you see some photos here from our first year when we were actually able to do this in person, which was a ton of fun. We've been running online, and as of right now, that's our plan, but we'll sort of see how things go to run our PD virtually with our teachers. The way it's been running the last couple of years, we've had various different versions of it. We even had names for it, the sprint and marathon version, but the version we've kind of settled on is a 2-week engagement where we have returning teachers that engage in stuff. And one part of the day, we have new teachers who engage in different components later in the day. And the underlying component of the PD is to really provide teachers with an opportunity to engage with curriculum and to engage with other teachers and other members of the e4usa community. So we do activities where we'll have teachers act as the students and engage in the activities that their students will engage in. And then we provide opportunities for teachers to act like the teachers and what sort of preparation goes into preparing one of the activities or lessons from the e4usa curriculum. So this right now, those dates have been set for this summer. This is sort of that sweet spot for us. We don't have a lot of flexibility here because we have schools in some parts of the country that literally start the day after, the week after this happens here in July, and then we have others that end close to the beginning of our PD. So this is that sweet spot across the nation to allow us to conduct this 2-week PD without overlapping with any of the holidays during the summer. You can go ahead and go to the next slide here. A big piece of the e4usa professional learning, and you notice I differentiate professional development and professional learning because we do have a professional development during the summer. We do some mid-year PD, and then of course every summer we do some PD for our returning teachers. But the professional learning goes beyond just the professional development components. There are many different ways in which we engage our teachers in overall professional learning activities. And a big piece of this is our community of practice. So obviously that community of practice is engaging teachers that are involved in the e4usa and teaching e4usa curriculum. But we have administrators. We are now at a point where we have had many teachers teach this multiple times. We now have mentor, we actually call them coaches now to make sure that we're differentiating the various different roles that everyone has. We have university liaison and industry liaison and community partners that teachers are going to be engaging with in the curriculum in their classrooms. All of these individuals are part of that community. And we recognize this community is even bigger than that, right? Everyone is at their own individual school, and that we have as part of the application, we want to make sure that there is administrative support for engaging in this curriculum at your school. So if you go to the next slide, Brooke, we recognize there are other players, and one of those players are school counselors. And so we've actually done some pilot work where we're engaging school counselors. So if you're at a school or working with a school and you want to engage their counselors, who are oftentimes the ones who are encouraging students to either take this type of class or to potentially pursue a degree in engineering. We're working on identifying additional funding to build off of the pilot that we ran with counselors. And we're recognizing that there's essentially an ecosystem here that we need to address all the different players. This project is huge and it involves a lot of people. And this is why we're engaging so many in this community of practice to help provide all the support that our teachers, our schools, and our students need as they engage in this e4usa project. So we'll shift to the next slide here, and I'm going to hand it back over to Stacy. We'll talk a little bit about that portfolio piece that I mentioned earlier.
So early on, we actually led with this part. So back, rewind probably almost 15 years ago now, we were talking with different organizations about how could we provide a class that might really feed into getting credit for prior learning. One of the things that was pointed out to us is that you have no standardized way of assessing engineering design process work. And so our idea was, well, we need a rubric to be able to do that. And so we created what's called the Engineering Design Process Portfolio Scoring Rubric. It's the EDPPSR. It's a great acronym that really rolls off exactly my tongue and not a lot of others. But it is it's a rubric that has been both validated and proven to be reliable. And we took that and we're like, we have this great rubric, and we can share that copy of that rubric with you. But we wanted a tool that would make it easier for students and teachers to just facilitate sort of the passing of documents and the scoring with this rubric. And so Lee Apst and others launched this work called My Design. And it is a tool now that we have available in 2 different formats. One format is through a learning management system integration. So basically, if you use something that has LTI 1.3 or greater, which is mostly Canvas, but also a couple others fall in that category. Or we have what we call the standalone version, which is now just a separate URL that you can go to, log in with your credentials, and then start using with your students. And the general idea is that you go into here and you create an engineering design problem, a project that can be solved. You set it up for your class, and then you, add your students, or you put your students in teams, and then you add the teams. And so then it makes it just really easy to distribute information about the project. Maybe there's some documents you need to share. And then on the student side, they submit their work element by element. So for instance, elements A, B, and C all come together to really do the problem identification, setting it all the way up through setting up criteria and constraints. You can see element A there in the photo is presentation and justification of the problem itself. And then once a student or a student team has submitted their work, the teacher can come in, download their file that they have, read it, score it through the rubric, just click and point, the level of the score they want to give on the rubric. A teacher could decide maybe the document needs to just be marked up. Maybe they want to mark it, write on it, do something. They can actually send that document back to the students through the system. Or they can also just choose, which is what I typically do. There's a box in there that you can just type your comments. And we hope that students or teachers will use this both for formative assessment and eventually summative assessment. But the formative piece is really great because it helps students figure out, am I using the engineering design process well, and am I documenting it well, which are two separate but related and important things. We also hope that My Design helps teachers really just keep track of where are students in their design process. What step are they on? What have they submitted? What deadlines have they made? Maybe what deadlines have they missed? That sort of thing. So, but it is a wonderful virtual tool that we make available to all of our teachers to use.
So Adam,
Okay.
we'll transition back to you.
Yeah, so I have the final set of slides here. Then we're going to roll into some frequently asked questions before we open it up for additional questions. Final set of slides here are just research. So we mentioned this is an NSF funded project, and a major component of our funding is to ensure that we are doing some sort of evaluation and research associated with this curriculum and professional learning and various other activities that we have to ensure that we are having impact and that we are addressing sustainability and scalability of our efforts here, so that when our funding runs up, we don't just fade off. And so that's something we are thinking about. So a major piece is to ensure that schools that are interested in engaging with us at this stage and are interested in potentially engaging in e4usa are open to the possibility of participating in research. It is not a requirement, but as of right now, we have, I think, 95% of our schools are participating in research. And really the only schools who aren't participating is because they're still dealing with COVID, sort of fallback of, we're just not quite ready to do this type of thing. But it is our hope that all schools will engage because we want to know what's going on in the classroom. So that includes engaging with students, engaging with teachers, engaging with administrators and others who are engaged in these classrooms. So what does the research entail? Collecting, so from the teacher perspective, we're going to need some help, right? Collecting student assents, parent consents, and of course, teacher consents themselves. Distributing surveys and helping us set up focus groups that can be done through Zoom with students, with teachers, and so on and so forth. Stacy mentioned this earlier. One of the biggest challenges we have is ensuring that we have research approval or institutional review board approval at every single school. And at some schools, it's as simple as the principal giving us a thumbs up and a quick email. In other cases, it can be a multiple month-long process. And it is one of the bigger challenges that we face. It's why we continue to start this process earlier and earlier and earlier. It has been a big challenge, especially with COVID, but it is our goal to have 100% of our schools engaging in this process. Go ahead and flip to the next slide there, Brooke. The thing that we just want to make sure that we guarantee, because we have IRB approval at our universities and we have our team approved to conduct this research, is that this data and all the records are kept secure in online databases. We are 100% surveys are anonymous, interviews and focus groups are confidential. So unique identifiers and so on and so forth are associated with anything that may or may not have a video or an image to ensure that individuals' names and identities are not revealed outside of the researcher participant relationship that occurs. And so our goal is to disseminate this work to help support further growth of e4usa. And we recognize that obviously when you're sharing experiences, of course, there can be some things that as you're sharing your experience, yeah, sure, there's a possibility for negative experience to have occurred. We view and what we've seen in our time and engaging with this and from the work that we have published, that this is generally speaking, low probability of high risk event happening. Some students, yeah, they don't jive with engineering ultimately, but they do hopefully appreciate the knowledge that they gain from the experience. But overall, this is just our attempt to be able to support what we're doing and to encourage others to potentially want to engage, like yourselves, in the e4usa program as a whole. And with that, we're going to transition to our frequently asked questions before we open it up for broad questions. And if you do have any broad questions as we're going through these, feel free to pop them in the chat. Maybe we'll have you read them out loud when we get through our FAQs.
Thanks so much, Adam. And for our first question, will any credit be offered by participating in the professional development community, or I should say professional learning community? There have been, and my colleagues will let me know if there's been anything additional, but at least as of our last offering, there was an opportunity through the University of Maryland's Office of Extended Studies for 5 continuing education units upon successful completion of a new teacher e4usa PD program. And that really, I think, would refer back to some of the things that you heard Adam say a few minutes ago. So that is our first question. And Stacy, we will rotate this next one to you.
All right, our next question is, will institutions accept e4usa course completion for college or university credit? So yes, we are looking for an ever-growing list of universities that will offer credit for prior learning. So right now we already have a number of universities on the books that are listed here. And they do it in a variety of ways. Some do it through dual credit or dual enrollment type of opportunity. And some are more open, or any student at any e4usa school could come in and, like in the case of University of Indianapolis, they present a transcript. Some, like University of Maryland, you sit for an exam and have your work reviewed, but there are a variety of schools and a variety of ways of doing that. We'll be publishing a prospectus soon that documents the universities that have signed on to do this. And if you're interested in becoming university liaison, that is one of the things that we will ask you to commit to do, is to look into, could your university do it? I recognize that no single professor has control over a decision like that, but that's what we are working on.
Okay, I'm up next here. So next frequently asked question is, how much will this course cost the school and what resources will be provided by e4usa to e4usa schools? So cost is obviously going to vary depending on how many students you have and what resources you may have available to you inside and outside the class. We have designed this to be comparatively low cost to implement relative to some other engineering curricula for the high school level. You don't need to have a 3D printer or a laser cutter or any sort of machining tool to be able to implement this curriculum in your school. What we have seen in many cases is that at the end of the school year, our teachers are saying, I have a whole bunch of money left. I don't know what to do with this money. And we encourage them to buy some things like that to help facilitate the curriculum going forward, but it's not necessary. Many of the activities that students can engage in can be completed with pretty regularly cheap, in some cases, reusable materials. that teachers can purchase and use to complete the various different activities that students will engage in. We do provide our teachers with stipends. So they have stipends for themselves, but also additional funding to support their first implementation of the e4usa curriculum. And then some additional funding is available as they shift into potentially year 2 and 3 and beyond. As long as we have funding through the NSF, we will offer that support from e4usa. But we do provide the support to get teachers off the ground in terms of getting a good understanding of what costs they may incur in terms of buying materials to be able to support the curriculum. And that number keeps changing. Stacy, what's the current number in terms of what new teachers get? I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
That's okay. New teachers receive a total stipend of $5,000 that is spread out over the year. Returning teachers receive a total stipend of $3,000.
Thanks. And then what's the material support? Is it $2,500?
New teachers receive a budget of $2,500. That's definitely theirs to spend. Returning teachers receive a certain budget of $1,000, and they have access to apply for much larger funds as needed. We have a total pot of money this year of about $50,000. We do that so that we can be sure to support the schools that are the most under-resourced the most.
Thanks so much for the question. This next question, you heard earlier on that we were initially based in states like Maryland, Virginia, Arizona. We've expanded. We've had colleagues that have transitioned to Indianapolis and many other places that you saw on our map. The question might come for schools that are not in areas that we are not currently in. Let's just say, let's use a state that we're not in right now. Let's just say Oregon. What financial support would be offered to support the implementation of the curriculum? And so what's critical is that we try our best, even in a COVID-19 space, to align a high school with a college or university partner. So those Mighty Ducks, I forget what their mascot is, but the Ducks out in Oregon, we'd love to get a high school connected with them. What we do, and Stacy is really taking on the lion's share of these connections, is try to find those matches. And so what we typically ask to do is we ask those college partners to do is to find ways to support. That could be by providing funding, but it could also be really, and you heard Stacy say this earlier, it's really more about, at this point, finding ways to provide a credit-bearing course that would be accepted at their respective institutions. So if you're a college or university and you'd like to be involved, we do have a couple of email addresses set up. Our new one, I'll just note, and I'll say it again later on, is apply@e4usa.org. You can get a response that way. All right. So what I will say now is I'll give this back to Stacy to talk about how we are considering different schools.
So we love to have schools that come to us and say we're interested in joining in. You don't have to have already identified a university that's going to work with you. Although there might be some natural partnerships. We love it when the university says, we really want to be a part of this, and they go out and help us find some high schools that are interested in it. So after first we'll just screen the application to make sure it's complete. Remember, we have both a teacher and an administrator part of the application. So we want to see that both of those are there. But we're going to be looking for things like support from senior leadership. Is the school district really involved here? We're particularly interested in continuing to grow geographically, as well as schools without an existing engineering program. That's not to say we don't want ones that do have, but those are two places as we consider really fully testing our curriculum. We want to make sure we're reaching those places. I would toss in we could probably use some more schools in rural locations as well. But the one thing that we are going to require this year, again, if you'll remember, we've got that conditional acceptance where we write back and say, like, we're a go, but we need you to pause and make sure that your IRB or your school or your district will be willing to sign on to that. So those are some of the things we're looking for. There's no magic formula to like, have you taught this class, or were you an engineer or not? We really love to have a diversity of teachers teaching e4usa. Thanks.
Okay, so I've got a double whammy here. First one is, can schools have multiple participating teachers? And the answer is yes. We have models to allow for particular schools that may have larger populations, who may have multiple teachers that want to offer this course to multiple class sections. Absolutely, we have models, and we have a number of schools that are engaged in e4usa right now that are implementing that model with multiple teachers. And then, is there a limit to the number of students that can participate? There isn't per se, but we've, just over the years that we've been testing this, ideally classes are around 20 to 30 students. I think we know this from teaching anything, right? That the smaller the class size, the easier it can potentially be. But in terms of being able to engage with different students and the team working aspect, to learn from other projects that students are working on, and to just engage with different students in the classroom, an ideal size is around 20 to 30, but we do have some teachers who are in larger size classes, and we have some teachers who are in much smaller classes. So there's no, say, exact number that we're looking for here, but this is sort of what we have found to be sort of that ideal size that allows the teacher to be able to handle all the active chaos, as you will, in terms of these engineering design activities that are occurring in the classroom. And I'll hand it back to Brooke.
All right, so this is another common question, and how are we different? And I like to stay in order of who's talking, but I actually believe that Stacy and Adam are probably better even have to take this question, but I will read it, and then I'll ask one of them to provide a broader summary of this. So generally speaking, Project Lead the Way has done a great job in spreading the word about engineering throughout the country, as most of us know, if not all of us know. The question that we often receive is, how are we different from PLTW, Project Lead the Way? So without reading this, I'll ask Stacy, maybe you to give some overarching comments on this question.
Sure. There's certainly some, some details that are different about like what kind of training is required and the cost to implement and things like that, which are certainly worth consideration by a school. But we're philosophically different also. We aren't, we focus some on engineering literacy, that we really want every student to know what an engineer does, what our design process is like, how we solve problems and why we solve problems. So we're very much focused on this idea of thinking like an empathetic engineer without necessarily becoming an engineer. So for some of us, some of this around success is not only measured by how many students go on to be engineers in the traditional way, though we hope we create more and more diverse engineers who do this, but just sort of, can students apply complex thinking or solve problems in potential future courses? So I think that's one particular big thing there. And if we look down kind of at the latter part of the answer, thinking about for educators, what's that classroom look like? It's definitely an active learning place, and there isn't that march through the different disciplines. We hope students do identify and start to talk about and understand what different kinds of engineers do, but we are not prescriptive in making sure that different disciplines are covered necessarily. We have our students, we engage in real problems with real clients in our first year, and making sure that they're solving authentic engineering design problems rather than memorizing anything, or again, solving a particular problem that's maybe been solved before. We're looking at, maybe a problem that needs to be solved at your school. We do that typically in units 3 and 4. And in our later units, in units 5, 6, and 7, we are looking for, each team has a different client and they're solving something that needs to be solved for that client. Adam, anything you want to add to that?
That was a fantastic answer, Stacy. But for the sake of time, yeah, I think you covered all the bases.
And Stacy, just keeping it in order, we'll get you to take the next question as well.
Sure. So my question, is it possible for this course to fit into an existing curriculum for the upcoming academic year? If so, and how? Well, yes, definitely. One of the things that one thing you could do is you could create a whole brand new course and add it into your curriculum. Maybe you've never offered engineering ever before. We are thrilled to have the new course come on board. And we're hoping by working with schools early enough this year that we can really aid them in establishing a new course and having time for that enrollment process to happen during the school's normal timeline. But the other thing that we can do is perhaps there already is an intro to engineering type course, and perhaps the school is unhappy with how it's going in some capacity, and they're interested in some of our goals, our learning objectives around diversity, as well as doing some client-based authentic problem solving. So one of the things that we have found effective in this regard is that we're more than happy to work with you on a one-on-one basis to figure out, does it align well enough, especially if you're in a public school and you have standards, state level courses that you have to match up with. We're good at sitting down with you and looking through those and saying, yeah, this is e4usa is at least an 80% or greater match, which typically allows a district to adopt a new curriculum that is still fulfilling a particular set of standards that must be filled. So you can just let us know if that is your case, if you'd like to have an in-depth meeting, if we get far enough along in this, and we'd be happy to do that.
Thanks so much, Stacy. And with that being said, do we have another question? Okay, we have, I think this is our final one, and Adam, I'll let you take this one.
Yep, and so I'm the perfect person to answer this question around research expectations. And so over the years, we've sort of structured our stipends around these various different activities that we expect teachers, principals, school administrators, various other individuals at the school who are engaging in this, including students, in terms of what our expectations are. As I noted earlier about research, our hope is that we have 100% participation, that really the only time that we are not getting that research data collection occurring at a school is because of something outside of our control, like COVID-19. And so our hope is that all of these different individuals will engage in these different activities. We feel like we are providing a generous stipend to our teachers, and part of that stipend is not just to teach the curriculum, but it is to engage in these research activities. And we hope that each teacher will encourage their students to want to engage in these activities that we have in terms of data collection, so that we can capture their voices and the insights of their experiences, which is super critical to our understanding of the effectiveness of our curriculum. And as a side note, I find that most teachers, when we say, hey, can you put a focus group together, they always give me their top students. And it's like, that's great. I do want to hear what's happening with those top students. I want to hear from all students. And that's the key, is to make sure that we're capturing the voices across surveys, as well as across focus groups and other research activities that we have, to ensure that we are getting an understanding of that for all piece, so that we are capturing those experiences of all students, all teachers, all schools that are engaging in this program. And I saw a question pop in the chat there. Do you have any charter high schools in the program? Yes, indeed we do. We have a wide variety of private, public, charter. We have all girls schools. We have schools that are located in rural areas, in suburban areas, in metropolitan urban areas. And then you saw the states that Stacy presented earlier. And so we have a good variety, and that's something that, in terms of answering that previous frequently asked question around the application review process, we're hoping to continue to onboard diverse schools to give us different perspectives, so that we have a better understanding of the impact of this program across these various different types of schools and in places in the United States.
Thanks, Adam. And it's probably a good place to stop, because I do have 8:13 on my clock here on the East Coast. I'm going to just give us some time to ask any final questions or any additional questions that you may have. I do have some points of contact that I'll share with you all electronically, but I think it's more important that we get some good discussion in. And we apologize, we took a little bit longer than we would like to, but I think we wanted to make sure that we conveyed the information that needs to be shared. So any questions And I think here is a question that Lynn is asking. If a school has a well-established engineering curriculum, such as an engineering course for each grade, would you be interested in having this? Okay. Does anyone want to take that question that's being asked on the?
Yeah, I mean, we've numerous schools that do that already, and often they come to us because they are noticing that they're not satisfied with their first course for whatever reason, and so that's where we can come in and we just substitute in, you know, as long as we meet enough of that school's standards, whatever body they're working on. So, I mean, yes, we're eager to have, you know, additional schools that fall into that particular category. And then I think the second question Lynn has asked, maybe here, Adam, might be a good one for you, about what are the treatments and how are you assessing them?
All right, is that in terms of our research methods or the actual curriculum activities?
Kind of everything. Like, are the teachers, like their professional development, is that a treatment that you're assessing its effectiveness? And then the curriculum, is that a treatment? Just along the same lines.
Yeah, sure. So what we've been doing, and as we're transitioning into our next phase, is that first what we do is we collect information from teachers following the PD. A lot of what we focus on is how you feeling, how confident are you as you're preparing. So that gives us sort of that first data point to have a better understanding of, okay, now you know what E4usa is, you've gone through the PD, how prepared do you feel? And then as they go through that process, we have a subset of schools that we are looking at sort of digging down a little bit deeper, our case study schools, as we refer to them, or we're actually going to those classes, sometimes virtually, depending on the situation and the proximity to one of our research team members, and just observing the classroom. How is the teacher engaging with the students? What are the students doing in that classroom? And assessing it from an observation perspective. We also do interviews with the teachers. We do some that are a little bit more informal, like after an observation. Hey, how do you feel like that went? We also do formal interviews with the teachers. And those are typically done as individual interviews so we can capture their specific experience that they're having. And then for students, though, because they're experiencing the same thing, we typically do focus groups with the students. And we typically do most of this as a mid-year point. So they've had a half of the curriculum so far to get a sense of where they feel right now. And then we'll do this again at the end. Also along the way, we do pre, mid, and post surveys of our students and our teachers. These are continually changing as we're trying to capture and understand different aspects of the curriculum. And obviously with emergent data that we've had from our first couple of years, it's led us to ask additional types of questions. Some of the questions we've asked have looked at how students are developing the skills around engineering design. We've been looking at engineering curiosity. We've been looking at career potential changes in career decision-making and potential pathways that students might be traveling down. We're also enacting a new study that we're just trying to push out right now to kind of look at, well, where are these students going? One of the hardest things to do in social science research is longitudinal data. Mm-hmm. So we've built in a new program where we're going to be offering small book stipend scholarships for our alumni students who go off and potentially pursue engineering degrees, to let us know what kind of impact is this program having long-term on these students, whether they had it as a freshman or a senior or anywhere in between. What sort of impact are we having longitudinally in these students' decisions that they're making in terms of their careers? So that's some high level of some of the things that we're looking at, but the general treatment, any of the PDs, we always want to have an understanding of the effectiveness of those. The curriculum itself are the primary pieces that we're focusing on. That help answer your question?
Yeah, very well, thank you. I do have a slight follow-up in terms of, you mentioned teachers and students. What about administration? Are we assessing how, this model is fitting in with existing high schools?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So we've actually developed and we've done some pilot work over the last couple of years of actually talking to administrators, talking to guidance counselors, talking to CTE directors, you name it, anyone who may or may not have an influence on whether this course even gets offered at their school. We are starting to collect more in-depth data from those individuals. So we actually just developed a new protocol that's specifically focused on school administrators. We are also hopefully going to be in the future collecting data from community partners that engage in the classroom, university liaison, individuals that are providing different roles, right? Sometimes they're community partners, sometimes they're allowing students to come, sometimes they're engaging in the class themselves as like actual visitors, parents who also obviously are connected to whether or not students are enrolling in this course. So we are looking at the entire ecosystem that potentially gets impacted by this, and we are now developing protocols to start to collect those insights from those individuals as well. It's a big project and a lot of different players, as you saw from the community of practice.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.